Welcome to part 3 of a 3-part storytelling exercise, essentially, of about sort of the Hasidic wisdom. As those of you who were here for the beginning of this, a couple of months ago, it's been a once-a-month event, and I talked a little about the Baal Shem Tov and the founder of Hasidism, and that the Shem, the name that the Baal Shem Tov was the master of, because literally Baal Shem Tov means master of the good name in Hebrew. Baal is master and Shem is name and Tov is good. Master of the good name. The name is God's name. Even though the Talmud, several places, says that one of the most important qualities anyone can have is a Shem Tov, a good name. And that what we're supposed to aspire to in our own personal lives is a Shem Tov. And a Shem Tov, a good name, obviously means our reputation. How people think about us when they hear our name. You know, you say Stephen Reuben, and then what do they think? And what you want, of course, is that they think something positive, that they think that you're a just person, that you're a compassionate person, and that you're a righteous person on some level, and that they say nice things about you if they were going to talk about you. And that if you had as your goal in life to develop a Shem Tov, then you would act in such a way in your interactions with other human beings that the results would be creating a Shem Tov. That there's an advantage in having goals, spiritual, ethical goals in life, one of which would be to have the kind of reputation that would make your mother proud, that would make your mother proud. Because everyone wants their mother to be proud of them. I don't think the Rabbi said that in the Talmud, but, but they should have said that in the Talmud. And everybody is, most people are insecure about themselves and about how they come across to people. It's one of the great challenges of human life is to conquer our own insecurities and not overcompensate for our insecurities and become bullies and things like that in life in general, fearing that that's the only way we can make a difference is, to be bigger and badder and meaner and tougher than someone else. Certainly there are lots of examples of that, people who, kids and other youths of various kinds who walk around with guns because it makes them feel important. Because if you point a gun at someone, suddenly you're really important. And that obviously in Jewish tradition and in rabbinic values, how I got on that, I'll never know, but in rabbinic values, if you have as your goal developing your own soul in such a way as to leave a legacy of a Shem Tov, then it will direct the kind of behavior that you are and the kind of person that you are. It can actually be, in a sense, a way of simplifying life. That is, look how complicated life is. All the choices we have to make all the time. All of the decisions with our friends, with our family, with work environments, with our peers, people who work for us, people for whom we work. All of the different challenges that we have and all the different choices we have to make every single day, 100 times a day, sure more than 100, we're making choices. And ultimately the quality of our lives is very much a reflection of the quality of our choices. The question is, what directs your choices? How do you know what choices to make in life? This is an ongoing, no matter how old we are, an ongoing life challenge. How do I know whether to choose right or left? How do I know whether to choose, black or white? How do I know which choice is going to be the best choice? And it's easy if you have a rule book. So if I give you a rule book and say, when you wake up in the morning, put the right shoe on first, and then put the left shoe on, say these words and then say those words, say them in this order. Excuse me from the coughing, it's been months. I just keep doing it for fun. Evidently. If you have a rule book that tells you how to act all the time, makes life easier. You don't have to worry about so many choices because you just follow the rule book. And fundamentalist versions of every religious tradition, in a sense, create a rule book, their own rule book that helps reduce the number of choices that you have if you're going to follow the rules, and makes it easier to know what to do. In general, we have our own versions of that in Jewish tradition. Other people have their own versions of it. As I've often shared, I get up in the morning. There's a certain series of prayers, of blessings that I recite. Get up in the morning, I say, Modeni lefanecha, thank you, God, that I woke up. And then I say a blessing over all my body parts that work and the ones that don't work. I say blessings over that too, because, of course, the rabbis say you have to bless God for the bad just as you have to bless God for the good. Either way, it's yours, and you're alive. If you're alive, if you're saying blessings, you know you're alive. So, I was in the hospital for a while. I'm surprised to see him, and the first thing I said was, I'm so glad you're alive and here. It's like, came out a little crooked that way, but, he knew what I meant. Here he is. So, you say these blessings to, first of all, frame your life through a lens of gratitude. And secondly, I say them as a spiritual discipline. If I were a traditional Jew, I might say the same blessings, but for a different reason, because I'm supposed to, or because I think that's what God wants me to do. Oh, you're so sweet. It won't help. You have a Shem Tov. It's Carol. That's your Shem Tov. So, if you're a follower of any fundamentalist version of traditional religion, then in general you, in a sense, do things because at some version God said so, or you think that that's the right way to follow these particular rules or these particular rituals in a particular order. And part of the divide between, I guess, what I would loosely call liberal religion and traditional religion, they're not really good terms, but is that in progressive liberal traditions of all kinds, it's an understanding that these rituals and traditions and customs came about from human beings. That, when we light candles on this table on Friday night, and we have a Kiddush cup there, and we hold up the Kiddush cup, and we bless the Kiddush cup, and we light the candles, and we say those words, and we have a challah, and we say the blessing over the challah, and we tear the challah. Why do we do that? Well, why do we do that, actually? As long as I asked rather than a rhetorical question. So why do we do those things? Tradition. New York, Fiddler on the Roof's playing again. One of. I think it's there, but yeah, it's there. One of our congregants is producing it. Catherine Schreiber is now producing. Catherine Schreiber, she produces lots of Broadway shows. Anyway, enough of that. So tradition is one, but tradition. So we do it because of tradition. Why else do we do it? It's a way of, thank you, God, for the bread that we eat is a blessing over sustenance. Gratitude for the food that we eat. Saying grace, so to speak, as we say in general American society. You bless the food. Why do you bless? In fact, the Talmud says it's forbidden to enjoy anything in life without a blessing. It's one of those fun Talmudic facts. It's forbidden to enjoy anything without a blessing. You're supposed to say a blessing. And in fact, the Talmud says, I use that phrase a lot, even though the Talmud doesn't say anything. It's people in the Talmud who actually say things, but it's easier just to say, in the Talmud you could find that it says, and I think I mentioned this in a previous week, that you were supposed to say 100 blessings a day. That was one of them. You're supposed to say 100 blessings a day. So, why would the Talmud say you're supposed to say 100 blessings a day? What's the point of that?
So you live your life consciously instead of unconsciously.
Yeah. So you have a spiritual consciousness to the arc of your day. I always think of it as, it's kind of every day should be a blessing treasure hunt. Right? And if you approach the world as if every day is an opportunity for a blessing treasure hunt, how could I find 100 blessings today? Imagine how your attitude would be about everything you're doing. It's like looking for the blessings in everything that's going on, in the good and in the difficult that happens in life. You know, you're in a traffic jam, you're driving somewhere, and you're on the freeway, and you're not going anywhere. Back to the idea of blessings, and life's filled with blessings and curses, and sometimes you can't tell which is which. You're sitting in traffic. How do you find a blessing in that? That's a real question. So it could be a time of calming you down. That takes a real effort, because usually it's exactly the opposite. You're like, because you're not going anywhere. Lovely couple invited us to go to Disney Hall a week or so ago to hear the LA Philharmonic. We said we'd love to go to Disney Hall. They said, come pick us up at like 5:15. So we did. They live up in Mandeville Canyon. We picked them up at 5:15, and 2.5 hours later, I finally got downtown, because it was like a nightmare going downtown. 2.5 hours of sitting every place you go. It's just like you're not going anywhere, you're creeping. 2.5 hours to get downtown, literally. So, on the one hand, we decided we're not doing that anymore. But on the other hand, it was 2.5 hours of talking with these people and schmoozing, which I was going to do anyway. So what's the difference if I'm sitting in my car, just as long as I'm paying attention so I don't get in an accident, or if I'm sitting in a restaurant, or if I'm sitting anywhere else? I was going to be with them for those 2.5 hours anyway. Might as well. And there we were in the car together, having an opportunity to talk about all kinds of things that we talked about. So I can see that through either side of the lens. This is a nightmare. This is a curse. Oh, look at the blessing. I don't have to worry about what I'm ordering, any other distractions. I'm creeping along and we're schmoozing about life. So if you see the world as a giant, everyday, blessing treasure hunt, it shifts your attitude about the things that are going on in your life, which is, in many ways, what the rabbis meant when they said you should recite 100 blessings a day. They said exactly what the Hasidim are all about, which is what I've been talking about for the last 2 times and tonight, which is finding the sacred in the everyday. Transforming the simplest things into something transcendent. The Baal Shem Tov taught that every word you overhear, I love this one, it's not in any of those things I handed out, but just for fun, every word you overhear, no matter how seemingly inconsequential, is in fact spoken for your ears alone. That's kind of a crazy thing to say. Why did he say that? He was talking about, people gossip, people listening, whatever. It's true. In what way is it true? Huh?
The advice I get from hearing people, find out what if they found a plumber or this,
It's like you never know where wisdom's going to come from. The Talmud says, Ezehu Chacham, who is wise and answers Halomed Mikol Adam, the one who learns from everyone. Just because this person's the teacher, quote, at the moment, doesn't mean the person next to you isn't a lot wiser and can't give you something that's, happens to be exactly what you need today. While I'm talking about the Baal Shem Tov, maybe that you actually need a plumber more than you need a Baal Shem Tov that your neighbor can tell you. So the Baal Shem Tov says, imagine if you assumed every word that you hear is for you. You've got to figure out, well, what does that mean? What can I learn from that? How is that a blessing in my life? It transforms the everyday. It also is an opportunity to take something that you're not supposed to do, which is eavesdrop on other people, and turn it into God is speaking to you in some way. Because that's essentially what he would say. Every moment in life, life presents you with another opportunity to look within yourself and see where you can improve the quality of your thought, your word, and your deed. Do not imagine that the world revolves around you. It doesn't. But you know that whatever is in the world is in you as well. Let reality be your Rebbe. Let the reality that you experience in life be your teacher. In that sense, that's what Rebbe is, your teacher. so many spiritual disciplines teach you, including Jewish spiritual discipline, the discipline of Jewish spirituality, a better way of putting it, teach you that you can learn some of your most valuable lessons from the people who irritate you the most. Usually your children, but you can, sometimes your partners or your spouses or for sure your exes. You can learn so many valuable lessons from your ex-husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends and things like that. Truly, if you hold that relationship in that sense, you're able to learn so much about, first of all, yourself, obviously, because the goal in life really is having a spiritual consciousness in everything that you do. So that's why you start out traditionally with these blessings in the morning. You're not just getting out of bed and growling, I'm late, I'm supposed to be somewhere, I got no time to eat, I got to shake a shower, or whatever you have to do. That's one way of starting your day. And the other way is, Moda ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shechazarti b'nishmati v'chem l'rabba emunatecha. Thank you, God, for giving me my soul back. It's like, you can't be running out the door, really. I've tried it. While you're doing that, you can't be doing that. You do one or the other. So if you have the spiritual discipline to begin with prayers of gratitude, it transforms your attitude about everything that you do. Particularly if you're looking for 100 of them a day. Then you're looking for them everywhere. So that's the point of that. Ultimately, the point is, of all of these things comes down to, so I'll go back to where I started. I know you don't think I remember where I started, but I do, which was the Shem Tov, a good name. Not God's name so much as your own name as the Shem Tov. That one of the simpler, more focused ways of directing your choices about whether it should be right or left or black or white or whatever it happens to be as you go through your choices, is to ask yourself what the consequences of your choices might be. Because one of the greatest indicators of personal wisdom is our ability, or lack thereof, to anticipate the consequences of our behavior before we choose something. It's one of the things that we work with on kids all the time, because kids very young and kids very old tend to live right in the present. That's it. It's whatever's happening right this minute, and not think about the consequences. That's why we have in the legal profession, we have certain ages where you don't get tried as an adult yet, because you're not considered to be liable in the same way for your behavior, because it's understood that you're not so smart about what the consequences of this choice or that choice might be. Now with the latest brain research and all is clearly into your mid-20s and beyond, that certainly boys aren't responsible for their choices. They tend to act without thinking through what it means, really, what the consequences mean. Happens all the time. So it's because we understand that one of the qualities of adult wisdom is exactly that quality, the ability to, and before you act, to think about what's going to happen. Before you talk, how many relationships get buried because people say things and then go, oops. If I'd have thought for a moment, I wouldn't have said that, because, as the rabbis say, words are like arrows shot from a bow. Once they leave our mouths, we don't know where they're going to land and what damage they're going to do. It's just like that. So, and you can't put it back. It's out there. It's rattling around in the world doing damage. I don't know about you, but I have had the experience, because I talk a lot all the time, and I do it professionally and otherwise, of words that I said coming back to me way later than I ever said them. Years later, after I said something, comes back to me, bouncing around various places. Of course, in my profession, I have the experience of words I didn't say coming back to me as if I said them all the time. So that's just the nature of, I remember what you said, Rabbi, at that holiday sermon, and then they quote something that I'm sure I never said. But as long as they liked it, I figured it'd be okay. So something, because people hear not necessarily what you say. As you all know from your relationships with people, you think you're saying this and they're hearing that. And you're going, how did they hear that? I know that's not what I said. I said this. And people hear that because, we hear in our own context as well. So, anyway, so the fundamental principle of this good name thing, this Shem Tov, is, in a sense, for everyone to want to be a Baal Shem Tov, a master of the good name of their own name, of having their own name be emulating holiness. One of our tasks spiritually in Jewish tradition in life, I would say, is to imitate God. Certainly throughout rabbinic literature, as God is compassionate, we are supposed to be compassionate. As God is just, we are supposed to act justly. To sort of hold God up and the qualities of God that we enumerate through our prayer services and through the Torah and through rabbinic literature, the good ones anyway, as qualities that we would want to emulate in our lives. Imitatio Dei, I think, is the technical non-Hebrew term, but, imitating God. It's kind of like what Christians say when they say, what would Jesus do? Right? What would Jesus do? In theory, it's what would be the best, highest way of responding to this particular challenge. That's what you mean when you say something like that, right? What's the best in me? If the best in me were to respond to this, what would that look like? As opposed to the person who is ruled by my passions, or my anger, or my frustrations, or my instincts that aren't always the best. And what sets us apart from the animal kingdom as a whole is our ability to make these choices that are actually contrary to our own instinct. We all know that in general, animals respond and function according to instinct. You can mostly predict what they're going to do. If you know the instinctual behavior of a certain different species of animals, you know what they're going to do. Human beings are not so much. Some ways, but not so much. What makes us able to rise above that is that we are able to conquer our animal instincts in life. That's, in fact, the rabbis of the Talmud literally ask, who is strong? And their answer is the one who's able to conquer your own passions, your own animal instincts, to have your brain control your body and not the other way around. So that before we act, we think, what is this going to mean? What kind of person am I going to be if I choose this rather than that? If I respond this way rather than that way? If I hold my tongue or if I say what's on my mind? If I strike out physically or otherwise, or I don't? Who am I then? And we become not only what we think about, but we actually become to other people not what we think about, but we become what we say and do. Because I don't know what you're thinking about. You could all be like, I don't know, not in the room at the moment, somewhere else while I'm jabbering on. Who knows where you are? I have no clue. And you never know what's going on in someone else's mind. All you know is what they say and what they do. So what they say and what they do is who they are to you. And likewise for you. Who you are to everyone with whom you interact is simply two things. What you say and what you do. That's who you are. When I work with bar and bat mitzvah kids, which I'm almost exclusively not doing anymore, although I do have a bat mitzvah and a bar mitzvah coming up next month, the only one of the year, I talk about this with them. Who are you? How do you determine how people are going to see you in life? If you had a magic wand and could wave it, and people would look at you any way you wanted them to look at you and see you and think about you any way you wanted, what would you want them to think about you? How would you want them to perceive you? What would you want them to say about you? In fact, I use this and say, imagine you were overhearing a couple of friends of yours who didn't know you were there, and they're talking about you. What would you want them to be saying? What would you want to be hearing about that? To get back to the same notion that we have some control we don't have. People will say whatever they want to say, but some control we do have. At the very least, if our goal is a Shem Tov all the time, we hold that as sort of the flag at the end of the race, then we know that's the direction we want to go. We want to go and act and say in such a way every day that what people are going to say about us is more likely to be the Shem Tov. So, I did pass these out because I want to read some of these with you, and they illuminate some of the lessons of what I think Hasidic tradition is really all about. So let's do number 7. If some of you, that's the first thing, and some of you I passed out the old version, so you have to turn to 7. But let's do number 7, and because I have the microphone, I'll read it. Rabbi Yisrael of Reuben paid a surprise visit to his Hasidim and found them sitting around a table. His Hasidim are his disciples, sitting around a table, idly eating and drinking. The Rebbe frowned, clearly disappointed at the actions of his students. One among them stood and said, Rebbe, I heard Reb Pinchas of Koretz once say that a gathering such as this, Hasidim reveling in friendship, could be likened to the mitzvah of Torah study. Reb Yisrael said, I would not think to contradict Reb Pinchas, but the analogy depends on how the thing is done. But all we are doing is talking and eating, another student said. As long as we recite the proper blessings, benediction, how can we do this incorrectly? Reb Yisrael replied, it's a matter of intention, which in Hebrew is kavanah, focus, intention. It's a matter of intention. If you place yourself last that others may go first, then your act is selfless and holy. If you place yourself first, it's selfish and smacks of idolatry. If you do something for another or for God with no thought of reward or gain, you are hallowing the deed and uplifting the act. In that case, your action is holy. When you do something to further your own ends, you are debasing the deed and concealing the divine. In that case, your action is sinful. Still not satisfied, the Chassid said, Rebbe, what if my action is itself sinful, but my intention is pure? What if, heaven forbid, I speak ill of another to save a friend from being hurt? Is that a sin or not? I love this story. Intention is everything, Rabbi Yisrael said. If your intention is for the sake of heaven, that is, if it's for the good of the other and not to benefit yourself, even a sinful act can reveal the light of God. So, was that confusing or was that illuminating? What do you think? Confusing. So, what's the point? What do you think the point of the story is? What was Reb Yisrael's, what did he care about? Nobody knows your intention. So, here's the question, beautifully put. So no one knows your intention. You know your intentions. So, if you're a Hasidic Rebbe, who knows your intention? God knows your intention. Because God knows everything, because that's the nature of God. So, you know your intention. I mean, how do I look in this dress? Do I look fat in this? Sometimes the answer is always, you look great. And sometimes the answer is, that doesn't look so good. You look better in that one. Because sometimes she really wants to know, how do I look in this dress? And I'm the only one there. It's not that she's looking for a compliment. She wants to know how she looks in the dress. How is it fitting? How is it whatever? There's a million things that one could look in the dress or not in a dress. Or is it the right one for where we're going? Is this the right thing to wear for whatever? Sometimes the answer is, I love you. Doesn't matter how you look. Sometimes, no, don't wear that one. And Rabbi Yisrael cares about our intention in all of our actions, that we should intend them for good, that we should intend them for the sake of heaven, in this kind of a Jewish traditional rabbinic expression, l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, meaning to do a mitzvah. And sometimes you lie to do a mitzvah. There's lots of times when a lie can be a mitzvah. Like, somebody find an example of when a lie can be a mitzvah. Otherwise I'll have to. It should save someone's feelings. When in fact it doesn't matter, blue or red, but answering in the right way for that person saves someone's feelings. That otherwise would be hurt needlessly. I mean, there are times when people's feelings have to be hurt for their own good. That happens. You have to tell the truth about things, even though you know it's going to hurt someone's feelings. There are other times when, in fact, it's not the case at all. You might as well not hurt someone's feelings, right? Those are what we all call white lies or something like that, right? They're l'shem shamayim. They're with the intention of making someone feel better about themselves, feel okay about themselves or the situation or whatever. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. This happens to everyone. Whatever, Say it to little kids. They wet their pants or whatever. I mean, it's okay. It happens to everyone. It happened to me. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever, whether it's true or not. It's something to say. It's not about whether that's a factual statement. That's not the point of the statement. It's telling the truth. The point of the statement is healing. The point of the statement is helping. So that's what Reb Yisrael means by intention, I think. But it's also the case that only you know your intention. So the person out here still is going to judge you not by your intention unless you tell them, well, this is what I intended to do. I'm sorry it hurt your feelings. It wasn't my intention to hurt your feelings. My intention was whatever it happens to be. Because human relationships are messy. That's the reality. In this particular story, the point was, there's several points in this story. Because the first thing that the Chassid said to his Rebbe was, this other Rebbe, other famous person, Reb Pinchas of Koretz, who's a famous Rebbe also, Hasidic Rebbe, said that a gathering like this where we're in friendship, celebrating and sharing friendship together is the equivalent of studying Torah. Let's start with that statement. What do you think of that one? It's a cop-out? Yes, we do. This week's Torah portion, Vayakel, means to gather together. It's Kehilat Israel. Kehilah, community, is really a gathering together of people and making it a sacred community. I won't say any more for a minute. Let you say. So, in what way would you say, if you were going to support Reb Pinchas of Koretz, in what way would you say gathering together for a social event, socially, not for Torah study, could be considered the equivalent of Torah study? Janet?
Goes back to what you were saying before. It depends on what they're saying to each other. If they're learning from each other, which you just said, what everybody says, you're learning from what everybody says, then you could be learning just as much from the social event.
So it could be that the gathering, regardless of even if its intention was social, let's go out and have dinner together, that the result of that gathering is that you learn, that you expand your mind, that you learn from each other, that if you're open to, and often it's because you're open in friendship that you're able to hear someone else share things with you and learn things. So that's one possibility. What's another possibility, Carol?
There is the blessings of community. And how wonderful and lucky that people have each other, that they can be in each other's company, because life would be that much poorer if we didn't.
Right. So when we have things like at KI, like KISS, which is our women's group, right? What's it stand for? Society of Sisters, right? Kehilat Israel Society of Sisters. KISS. You go on a weekend retreat, right? So it's not all Torah study on your weekend retreat. It's being together. It's the being together part, and then there's also the bonus of, Rabbi Amy's there and doing things and you're doing whatever you're doing. But it's really the going and being togetherness that creates a sense of the sacred. You're there in a context of KI out, in Palm Springs or wherever you were, in Palm Springs somewhere, right, having this event. And in fact, in traditional Judaism, Shabbat, one of the ways you celebrate Shabbat is not going anywhere and sitting around a table, And for the Hasidim, for sure, the Hasidic Tish, the table of the Rebbe was like the place to be. Not just because the Rebbe is going to give you words of wisdom, but because in the gathering together as a community, you reinforce a sense of being a part of something bigger than yourself, which is what Torah is all about. Torah, yes, it's about behavior and doing the right thing and the ethics and the Ten Commandments and all those other things and our history and all what it means to be part of a Jewish civilization, but it's also about belonging. I mean, how many times those of us in a Reconstructionist congregation hear some Reconstructionist rabbis say, what gives Jews their identity is not primarily belief, but belonging. It's about belonging to the Jewish people. That's what this is saying. The saying that it's the equivalent of Torah study then becomes like a metaphor. It's not really about studying Torah. It's using the expression, it's the equivalent of studying Torah, because studying Torah is seen like the highest spiritual act you can do is study Torah. So what he's saying is there are other ways of having a spiritual experience than studying Torah that are also great, and they're also valuable, and they're also sacred. And in fact, gathering together in friendship, in chavruta, with the chavra, is one of those. Just like we have a whole series of what we call tikkun olam activities, right? Healing the world activities. They're not Torah study, but they're the equivalent of that in our minds. We built this building, when we designed this building with great thought. Part of that thought was those windows over there, and those windows over here, and that window over there, which is now covered up because you can't see it anymore, because we grew too much and now we have an office in there. We didn't used to. What's on the other side of those windows? Library. What's on the other side of those windows? Chapel. So the architects said Reconstructionist congregation is all about community. So we're going to build a synagogue that reflects a community of rooms, that reflects the different ways that Jewish tradition recognizes you can aspire to sacredness and holiness in your life in the context of a synagogue, so that study and prayer become equivalents. This is the prayer space. I mean, it's other spaces, obviously, but it's the prayer space. This is our sanctuary. That's the library. What do you do in a library? You got books. We're the people of the books. So they built that on purpose with those windows, literally as a way of connecting study of Torah to prayer, to whatever goes on. This is the chapel, but the chapel we use as a multi-purpose room for all kinds of other things, gatherings together, board meetings, or there are all kinds of things like that. Used to be anyway. So that's the notion is that, and out here, used to be able to sit where you're sitting, look through that window, and see an olive tree. You can't anymore because there's a shade there, but the olive tree's still there. And you'd look right through to where my office used to be. That's now Rabbi Bernstein's office. And you would see the olive tree. The olive tree was a way of, as a physical, really symbol of Israel. Makes sense. Olives and olive trees and peace. And here we're in the sanctuary with book study over there and a chapel over here with all kinds of different social activities going on, and a connection to Israel beyond that with the visibility of that olive tree over there that's lit at night, and all the different things. And the point was to physically, in the architecture of the building, remind us that there are many paths to spirituality and holiness in life, which is really what all that Pinchas was saying. It's not just about Torah study. It's not just about picking up a prayer book and reading the right prayer. There are 100 different ways of experiencing the sacred in your life if you're open to it. Tikkun Olam is one of those. There are people, their religious experience is going out and making dinner at Turning Point Shelter. I had the privilege of being out in North Hollywood at the Valley Shelter, which I was one of the people able, at the very beginning of the Valley Shelter when we started. They celebrated their 30th sort of anniversary, and had some of us who were the founders of it at the time there, and speaking and doing whatever. And it was very cool to see this place is still around 30 years later. There used to be an old funky motel that you rented by the hour that we turned into a homeless shelter. And now it's the biggest full-service homeless shelter in Los Angeles. But, it's like people from all the variety of churches in the valley, mostly in the valley because it's in the valley, and synagogues, that's their spiritual experience. Going there, volunteering, helping, being a part of that world of the homeless shelter. That's what the Hasidim are all about. It's saying you can find sparks of holiness in everyday experiences. That they're the equivalent of Torah study, which is the highest level you can get of, in a rabbinic mind, because that's what the rabbis did was they studied Torah. Okay, enough of that. Unless anyone's desperate to say something else. Okay, number 9. Skip number 8. Number 9. Called Without a Doubt. His Hasidim asked Reb Elimelech of Lizhansk if he were certain that he was assured a place in the world to come. That's in Hebrew the Olam Haba, as in when you die, you're going to go to heaven, basically. That's what they're asking him, the world to come. Absolutely, the Rebbe replied without hesitation. And how, Rebbe, can you be so certain? When we die in this world, we go before the heavenly court in the world above. Standing before the divine court, we are asked certain questions regarding Torah, Avodah, and mitzvahs. Avodah is worship, mitzvahs is mitzvah. Answer these properly and you'll go to the world to come. And you know these questions, Rebbe, the students asked? Yes. And you know the answers? Yes. And will you share them with us? The questions are the same for all of us, he said. Your answers must be your own. Yet I will tell you just what I will tell them. They will ask, Rebbe, did you study Torah to the best of your ability? And I will answer honestly, no. They will ask, Rebbe, did you fully surrender to God and worship? And I will answer honestly, no. Then they will ask me, Rebbe, did you do the mitzvahs and good deeds you could do while alive? And I will answer honestly, no. And then they will say, if so, then you're telling us the truth. And for that alone, you're welcome into the world to come. I love that story. That's a great story. What's the point? From Reb Elimelech. Tell the truth is one of the points. What else could you learn from this story? Yeah, exactly. If you're human, you're not perfect, which is perfect. You're perfectly human. You're perfectly who you are. Accepting your own limitations, your own insecurities is part of growing up and being willing to not beat yourself up for your whole life about all the things you didn't do, could have done, should have done, would have done, could have done today, because all of us can do that forever. One of the great challenges of life is not beating yourself up for all the things you don't do, because that's an endless list for everyone. There's a bottomless pit of things we could have done that we didn't do. We could have said that we didn't say. It's literally endless, right? So if you go down that dark path, you are lost in the maze of darkness forever, which is why there are lots of folk tales about things like that. People getting lost in the dark in the woods and things like that. Really, it's about us being lost in our own darkness. And the idea of not going there. Because we go there from time to time. One of the things I do often is officiate at funerals, obviously. That's part of what rabbis do. And one of the things that happens around funerals is that families gather together and they talk about the deceased. And friends often do similar. And very often, part of my job and those moments of great emotion and grief and sadness is comforting the family members who feel guilty about any number of 1,000 things they didn't do or didn't say to the person, for the person, on behalf of the person, or that they did say that they shouldn't have said, that they wish they hadn't said or done to the person who is now no longer there, alive anyway. Because all of us have those. All of us have regrets. All of us are perfectly human in the best sense, and in the real sense that we make mistakes. That's how we grow. That's how we change. Who's going to ever be frozen at any, pick an age that you want to just, if I could just stay whatever, that would be perfect. That was my perfect person. At age what? 20, 30, 40, 50, 60? What age is it that's your perfect person? You need to be perfectly the one you are today, because after all, it's all you get is today. Here it is. We all live only one day at a time. Here's the day. This is the only day. And regrets and guilt are almost the inevitable accompaniment to death and mortality. It just brings up lots of things for people, obviously. And some of that, if you're able to look at it realistically and say, yeah, I wish I'd said this or done that, but this is the way human beings are, and you put it aside, and then you experience and celebrate the relationship and the person whom you loved, that's the best you can do in life. Because otherwise you're going down a dark path that never, ever, ever, ever ends. Just by definition, there's an endless number of things that you didn't say in the world and in life and in relationships, right? Just by definition. So it's part of the dance and the art of relationships. So, anything else about this? Doing something? Yeah.
It's also, sounds to me, like it's also saying you got to be conscious. You can't just sort of, I've done everything right without examining yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. It's also recognizing that, we all have our limitations, and you need on the one hand to feel good about yourself, and on the other hand to know there's always more to be done. There's always more to be done. It's trying to keep that balance. It's like I mentioned, I think last time, the traditional notion that it's a high holiday notion that you often hear on the high holidays. We're supposed to have two notes in two different pockets. And one of them says, the whole world was created for my sake. The other one says, I am but dust and ashes. And you're supposed to enter the high holiday experience with those, and sitting there going, yeah, and the whole world, and back and forth. That's the balance of life. And you need them both, because you need spiritual self-esteem. You need to feel that you matter. You need to believe that there's a reason the Torah begins with human beings are created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. We, the Jewish people, thousands of years ago, asserted very boldly every single person in this room is made in God's image. That's an amazing thing to have said in an era when people didn't matter at all in most places in the world. Just pile the slaves up and, how many have to die to build a pyramid? Or whatever. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter because they didn't matter. We have a Torah that doesn't say, if you're rich, you're made in God's image. If you're powerful, you're made in God's image. The rest of you can just be whatever. It says, V'nivra Adam b'tzelmo, that human beings were created, bless you, in the image of God. And there's no except. It doesn't say except women, except gay, except this, except tall, except black, except white, except people who speak Arabic or Spanish or whatever. It just says human beings are made in the divine image. That's a remarkable statement. I mean, many of you heard me say before, I think it's actually the most powerful statement in the whole Torah. You could just have that one and not have any of the rest of the Torah. And if you believed that and lived that, it would transform the world. If every time you looked at someone, regardless of who they are, you saw back a reflection of holiness, of this made in God's image, you would treat that person in a certain way, different than many of us treat many of us in the world. So you need spiritual self-worth. You need the whole world was created for my sake, that kind of, but you also can't be arrogant and say, well, therefore I'm going to step on you because the whole world was created for my sake. So you obviously don't matter. Guess what? It was created for your sake too. It was created for everybody else's sake too. That's the realization that our lives come and go like this. I'm but dust and ashes means, where did I come from? Who am I? I'm this body that came out of dust and ashes. That's what the same Torah, same chapter, says, God kind of scooped up the earth and said, okay, fashioned a man and blew into the nostrils the breath of life, and here we are. So recognizing our mortality, recognizing our brevity on this planet, instills in us one of the most fundamental, certainly in the Hasidic world and in all of Jewish life, values, which is humility. One of the most important religious, spiritual values you can have is humility. Recognizing that even though the whole world for us is all about us, because that's how else it's hard to meet any other way, because this is where we live, inside here, at the same time, if that's the only way you live, then you become, one of the bullies of the world, one of the herders of the world. And so you remember that to have humility. It's enough of that. Okay. Good. Okay, number 10. We'll do number 10. It's cute. Also, I like it. Because it's about a kid. Child wisdom. I'm scaring him away. The day before becoming bar mitzvah, Reb Yisrael of Reuben was called into his father's study. We've met Reb Yisrael before. Now it's when he's 13. His father, Reb Shalom Shachna, Friedman, said to him, "Tomorrow, my son, you will receive a very special visitor, one who will not leave you for the rest of your life. Are you prepared to welcome this guest lovingly as befits one of her stature?" "Yes, father." This guest, and this is the boy talking. "Yes, father, this guest is the Yetzer HaTov." That's the good inclination. The passion for selflessness, goodness, kindness, and compassion. I began to prepare for her arrival long ago. "Really?" Red Shalom Simcha said. "And when was that?" His son answers, "When her partner, the Yetzer Hara, that is the evil inclination, the passion for selfishness, came to join me. I received her respectfully, and I said, you know that you and the Yetzer HaTov, you and the good inclination, are partners. You both dwell together in every heart. It would be unseemly of me to welcome one partner without the other. So I convinced the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, to leave and return only with the Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination. So in this way I'm prepared to welcome them both into my heart together." Okay, what is this all about? See if you can figure it out. Huh? Yeah, he's kind of one of the great Hasidic masters. So at 13, he was already smarter than everybody else in the world. So, okay, so what does this mean? What's going on here? What?
Acknowledging that we have choices. We have a choice in our heart, and based on each situation, we control our choices.
So it's acknowledging that we have choices. And our choices, in this case, using this example, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Ra, we have sort of good and evil in all of our hearts. And it's up to us to choose all the time.
And not to be hard on ourselves, knowing that we have them.
Not to be hard on us because we've all got the Yetzer Ra in us. Okay, lovely. Who else? What else does this mean? What do you think? What's going on with this kid, this precocious young child? Yeah.
What you were saying earlier, thank God for both the good and the bad that come in life, because there's good and bad in everything.
Yes, it's acknowledging that there's good and bad always. You don't have one without the other. When I said before, who is strong, the Talmud says, who is strong? The one who conquers his, today they say his or her, passions. Literally it says, the one who conquers his Yetzer. HaKovesh et Yetzro. One who conquers his Yetzer Hara, his evil inclination. That's the Hebrew, literally. It's recognizing that we have, and there's something similar in, like, I think probably every culture, some version of this. In the Jewish culture, it's we have a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Ra, good and evil inclination. We, all of us, have a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Ra in here, hiding out somewhere, wherever it is, in your heart, in your mind, in your body, in your wherever it is. We have, and they're partners. That is, you don't get one without the other. There is nobody on the planet who only has one or the other. In theory. I know, we're not going to go there. But in theory. In fact, Jewish theology and Jewish ethics is founded on the notion that every single human being has choices. That we have Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Ra, a good and evil inclination. And they are arm wrestling all the time. They are fighting with each other all the time. This boy who's about to have his bar mitzvah, just think about teenagehood, recognized that early on the Yetzer Tov, the Yetzer Hara showed up, the evil inclination showed up. But in Jewish tradition, in the rabbinic tradition, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, isn't about evil. It's about things like your sexual urges, and those are part of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Your destructive urges, and often sexual urges, become destructive. I'm involved in a project called Home Shalom, some of you know, that's about raising the consciousness of the Jewish community on the issue of domestic violence in the Jewish community and dating violence, and because it's a much bigger problem than we mostly acknowledge. I've got a day of learning happening next week on the 16th for rabbis and cantors and educators that I'm running up at the American Jewish University on domestic violence in the Jewish community, with a partnership with the Board of Rabbis and the Family Violence Project of Jewish Family Service. So, over the course of the year, as I've been preparing for this and working with them, it's sort of more and more examples of what I hear in this context would say people's Yetzer Hara, evil inclination, getting the better of them and taking it out on their partner, their own insecurities, their own whatever. And using sexuality as one of the primary ways of domestic violence, the forced sexuality. Date rape and dating experience, and something like 1 out of 3 teens reports some kind of experience of abuse in dating. To one degree or another. And there's obviously lots of different kinds of abuse, and emotional abuse and verbal abuse and financial abuse and sexual abuse and physical abuse and all those other things. But it's about this notion that we have the Yetzer, all of us have this in us, and our challenge is to control it, not let it control us. That's the simple version of doing that. So here's a kid reaching in puberty, whatever, with whatever raging hormones there might be that go on, saying, when that guy showed up, I told him to leave, because he's a Hasidic Rabbi, in waiting, and wait till the Yetzer Tov, his partner, the good inclination, showed up. When they came together, it'd be okay. Then I'd be willing to entertain and accept the Yetzer Hara into my life, because I have a balance, because life is about balance. It's not trying to ban. In fact, there's a wonderful story in the Talmud about how the rabbis once invoked the Baal Shem Tov, God's name, to banish the Yetzer Hara from the world. The evil inclination was banished from the world. So according to the story in the Talmud, after the evil inclination was banished from the world, no eggs were laid, nothing was built, nothing was ever created again. So they had to bring the Yetzer Hara back, the evil inclination back, because that same energy misused is the energy used for creativity and building and procreation. Obviously, you can rape somebody or you can make love with somebody. It's not the same act, but it's the same act. You know what I mean? In that sense? So it's like fire. You burn things down or you light things up. It's the fire. How you use the fire is what matters. There's fire out there. That's candles and wax, and a wick. But it's different depending upon how you use it. Same with the Yetzer Hara, with our evil inclination. And the idea is to recognize we have it, but we also have our good inclinations that can overcome, transcend, and balance out all of those energies so that they get channeled in a way that's creative and productive and serves the L'Shem Shemayim, serves God, that is, in that sense, serves a sense of the sacred, so that relationships become sacred. Relationships can become horrible and abusive, or they can become the source of holiness in your life, which is what they're supposed to be. That's why the tradition says when two people get married, there's really three. There's, if it's a heterosexual relationship, husband and wife and God to be successful, meaning that they're supposed to be helpmates and spiritual partners. That's why today, I did a wedding a couple of days ago. What day is today? Monday. Saturday night, had a wedding. One of our young kids who grew up in this congregation, Kate Barsky, sweet young lady, got married, 23, got married. Why was I going there? I don't know. Anyway, they had a ketubah along with the marriage license. That's where I was going. Ketubah, as many of you know, Jewish marriage license certificate, originally a legal document, ketubah, and in Orthodox circles still considered to be a Jewishly legal document, of course. The ketubah was originally, in case you don't know, a prenuptial agreement. Jewish civilization being ancient was always very male-centered, so it was easy for a husband to divorce a wife, hard for a wife to divorce a husband. So a couple thousand years ago, a rabbi named Meir created this document, it's called the ketubah, which essentially said that if the groom left the bride after the wedding, and then she'd be entitled to 200 zuzim and some other things, camels and stuff. So it's no longer technically the legal document because now you need a license from the state. Ever since the diaspora, a couple thousand years ago, Jewish law says the law of the land of the country takes precedence over Jewish law. You have to follow the law of wherever you're living. You don't get to say, well, Jewish law says whatever, you follow the American law. So you need a marriage license if you want to be legal. But people today, as did Kate and her lovely husband James, they had a ketubah, not because they wanted a prenuptial agreement, but because the ketubah then is a symbol of the fact that the joining of their lives is more than a legal agreement, that it's fundamentally the spiritual partnership between them. So these two documents are a way of sort of symbolizing that in their relationship. And they pick their own text and all of that. That's what this is about. That's the sort of the balance of what life is about. Recognizing that we have a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Ra always in our lives. So, enough of that. But I like that. Hang on. Because time flies when I'm having fun. What did I want to read? Go to number 13. You can go back, but I'm going to randomly pick a few. Then I want you to tell me if you know any. Reb Zusha, the child and the thief. Reb Zusha of Hanapoli went to visit his Rebbe, Reb Dovber, the Maggid of Metzrich. I have heard, Rebbe, Reb Zusha said, that there are 10 principles of divine service, but I have yet to learn what they are. I'm hopeful that you can teach them to me. Reb Dovber said, I cannot teach them to you, but I can point to those who can. And who might these be? Asked Reb Zusha. You can learn the first 3 principles from a child and the next 7 from a thief. Seeing that Reb Zusha didn't understand, the Maggid continued. Maggid means teacher, by the way. From a child you can learn 3 things. Be merry for no reason, never waste a moment's time, and demand what you want in a loud voice. And from a thief you can learn 7 things. Do your work in secret. If you do not complete a task one night, return to it the next. Love your co-workers. Risk your life to achieve your goal. Be ready to exchange all you have for even the smallest gain. Be willing to endure physical hardship and be devoted to your work and give no thought to doing anything else. Okay, so, I know, you think it's a dumb story. No, so, start with the child. You can learn 3 things. Be merry for no reason, never waste a moment's time, and demand what you want in a loud voice. What does he mean, be merry for no reason? 3 things we learn from a child. What's the first one? Allow yourself to enjoy life. When we become adults, as we grow up, we abandon the pure joy of just playing. And we have to have a reason. We go, let's see, I can fit that in between 9 and 10. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go play racquetball because it's healthy for me. I would schedule my time and do whatever, and all of a sudden it becomes a scheduled activity that you're doing, as opposed to what he suggests, the abandonment of kids, just like, everyone's story about getting kids birthday presents and they play with a box. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It doesn't really matter. That's not the toy that matters so much. It's just, if they're young enough, it's just, play with the stuffing in the box. It doesn't really matter. It's the ability to enjoy the moment. Part of this is the ability to be present in the moment. Yeah.
Okay, so I feel something about myself. When I'm at home working, because I work at home a lot, and I get too serious, I'll go outside with the dogs, and I'm not throwing the ball to the dogs, I'll bounce a ball. Literally bounce a ball. People would say I'm crazy. What's that lady doing after bouncing a ball? But it reminds me of when I was a kid. But other people might say you're crazy.
Beautiful. And it clears your head of, right? Instead of planning, thinking, doing, writing, how can I move this into that? It shifts your whole consciousness into bouncing the ball, into being present in the moment. And letting go. It's about letting go of all of the thoughts of, we think too much as we get older. We think too much. We're always thinking and planning and doing and judging. Mostly it's about judging, actually. It's we judging everything we're doing or not doing. Oh my God, I don't have time. How come I'm not doing this? How come I'm not doing this? I forgot to do that. Shouldn't I be doing this? Whatever you're doing, you're judging that you should be doing something else. It's very hard to be doing what you're doing because you're thinking of the things you're not doing while you're doing what you're doing, right? It's like you drive yourself crazy and everybody does it. It's like, I know I'm doing this, but I have 5 other things to do. Maybe I should be doing the other one, and then you're not really doing anything because you're half here and half there. So bouncing the ball is exactly going, I'm right here, right now. That's it. Free it up, let it go. Okay, beautiful. So that's the first thing you can learn. Be merry for no reason. From kids, you learn never waste a moment's time. How do kids teach you never waste a moment's time? Because they don't have a time awareness. It's like, tell a little kid, I hang out with the preschool all the time because they're my favorite group. So, they're on my level. So I bring my guitar, I sing with the preschool kids and do whatever. And, it's like, tell the 3-year-old, it's going to be your birthday in 2 weeks. What? 2 weeks? Tomorrow? Next week? 10 minutes from now? It's like there's no sense of time at all. It means nothing at all. So why is that a good thing? What's the good thing about being in the moment again? There's a common theme here. Being in the moment. Being present in your life. Back to the very first thing that was said about consciousness. Being present in your life. And demand what you want in a loud voice. I love that one. It's a profound lesson, actually. One of my favorite contemporary songs is Sarah Bareilles. Sarah Bareilles has a song called Brave that's out there. I want to see you be brave. It's about say what you want to say and let the words come out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave because so many of us don't stand up for ourselves, don't say what we want to say, and then run around regretting it and rehearsing it in our own minds. What I should have said, what I would have done, and you run this tape all the time instead of just saying it once and getting it out, and it has whatever effect it has. And it's not easy. It's tough because we're so insecure, frankly. So what if we say it and the person gets mad? What if we say it and we look foolish? We feel silly. What if we say it and what it's like? It's like being afraid to ask someone out on a date, kind of thing, or go to a teenage dance and watch kids. Like afraid to ask someone to dance because what if they say no? because nobody ever wants to get rejected. So you never want to ask someone something unless you know in advance they're going to say yes. So most people, what they do in relationships is they try to manipulate the relationship anyway so that they get what they want without having to ask for it. Because if they ask for it, what if the answer is no? Because as if we're so fragile, we're going to just fall apart if the answer is no. And sometimes people do fall apart when the answer is no. But mostly we don't. We're a lot more resilient than we give ourselves credit for most of the time in life. But still we have this insecurity. So that's the thing about kids, little kids without that insecurity, till they've learned the insecurities. Before that, they just say out loud whatever they're thinking. No filter. Boom. That's not okay for adults to have no filter. We don't feel comfortable around adults with no filter. We label them one thing or another, and we pat them on the head or we do whatever. But there's a certain freedom and awareness in that, and being able to ask for what you want in life. In general. Liberating. Takes courage. That's why I love that song, Brave. Yeah.
I had a sergeant in the Army who taught me something. He said, don't be afraid to ask. I'm not afraid to refuse.
Don't be afraid to ask. I'm not afraid to refuse.
And that was a very liberating.
It's great. Whatever works. Yes, my wife always, she used to teach confirmation class, part of confirmation class every year. She would do this little section that she liked to call Guilt 101. But it was assertiveness training. She used to do assertiveness training with 10th graders here all the time for many million years. One of the things that she used to say to them is, if you don't ask, the answer is definitely no. If you do ask, you just improved your odds 50% at least, right? So might as well ask. Ask for what you want. Okay, so that's it with a kid. Now from the thief. You can learn 7 things from this thief. Number 1, do your work in secret. How do you learn that from a thief? And why is that a positive thing? Do your work in secret? What does that mean, do you think? Learn to be alone. Learn to be able to be with yourself. See, if you're a writer, you got to do that, as Janet said. She's like, close the door and write. Unless you're doing that with a partner. It must be hard to write with somebody. It's okay to do that? You do that too.
Don't try to rely on other people.
Yeah.
Rely on yourself.
So some of it is self-reliance. Being able to be self-reliant is value. Do your work in secret, because of course thieves have to be in secret, because if they're out in public they get caught. Obviously the whole point of being a thief is stealing something without being caught. So everything they're going to do is going to be related to picturing a thief. But the point is, how does it relate to us? Doing your work in secret. Yeah.
Does it also have anything to do with humility?
Also has to do with humility. Absolutely. Does it have anything to do with humility? It's like, look at what I'm doing, everybody. Do your work because it's your work. You don't need the spotlight to do your work. Have enough humility to be able to do the work for its own sake. That's the part of doing. You're either doing the work for its own sake or because you're going to end up in the newspaper, with a picture going, look, I did whatever. Nice to get that. There's nothing wrong with that either, but that's not necessarily the reason. Yeah.
Just also, if you have something that you want to get done, don't let anybody else interfere with it.
Ah, beautiful. Yeah, if you want to have something you want to get done, do it. And somebody else interfering, the more public you are in trying to do that, the more you're asking for interference and people to tell you, no, you can't do it. Also, do your work in secret, because otherwise someone's going to say, no, don't do it. Right? And how many things wouldn't have gotten done if they'd listened to people saying, no, don't do it. Okay, number 2, if you do not complete a task in one night, return to it the next. What's the point of that? Well, first of all, if you're a thief, I guess,
Don't think that you're a procrastinator. If you don't finish something and you know you're going to go and finish it.
So come back. Even if you didn't finish something, don't see it through to the end. The value of seeing something through to the end. How many things didn't happen because somebody just quit just before being successful? Right? How many times in life? Yeah.
I've heard that before, and I don't see why a thief goes back to second night.
He wasn't successful quite. Trying to break in, didn't do it, maybe?
Probably left evidence that he broke
Or maybe left evidence, wanted to come back and finish the job.
out. He wouldn't.
Oh, he wouldn't go back. Yeah, I don't know. Don't ask me. It was Reb Zushias who said this. What do I know? But I think the point was perseverance. Yeah, the point was it's so easy to quit. I'm frustrated. I couldn't figure out the lock. I couldn't figure out the combination to the safe. I'm gonna like get some more help and then come back and try it again tomorrow night, as long as I can get in again to do it. The value of perseverance, certainly in all the things I've ever studied and read in my life, in my short, brief life, is that perseverance is probably the number one quality of success among people. It's more important than brains, and more important than talent, and more important than connections, and more important than anything else is simple perseverance, sticking with it until you succeed. That, it's the Thomas Edison story, obviously, about all the things he invented, and his statements that, you failed 1,000 times or whatever, and he said, no, I just had 1,000 different ways it wasn't going to work until I figured out how it was going to work. You just perseverance. Okay, and the next is love your coworkers. Have respect for the people that you work with. If you like the people you work with, you'll have a better life. If you're going to work with them every day, it's one of the worst things in the world is hating to go to work. There's lots of reasons people hate going to work, but hating to go to work because I've got to be with those people every day, it's like a nightmare because they're there. And unless you're the boss who can fire them all and start all over again, you don't get to vote on that. No one asked you, would you like to change all your coworkers? When you apply for the job. And if you don't like your coworkers, let us know. We'll be sure to clear them all out. It just doesn't work that way. The coworkers are who they are. They're the coworkers. Someone else gave you those coworkers. Your business, your boss, your congregation, your whomever, they gave you your coworkers. You don't get to vote on it. You only get to decide what you're going to do about it and how you're going to work with them, how you're going to experience them, how you're going to relate to them, and whether you're going to do it in a way that brings people together and makes it a positive experience and a loving place to be or not. You can't control other people. That's the other thing. Your coworkers are who they are. You can only control you. You can't control the circumstances of life. You can only control your attitude about those circumstances when they happen. That's part of what this is about. Okay, risk your life to achieve your goal. Here's a grand statement. What do you think? A little overstated? What's the point of him saying risk your life? Be all in. Be all in. Go for it. It's be all in. So if you're going to do it, do it. If you're going to be successful, you need to give yourself over to whatever it is you're doing in life. Relationships, work, friendships, family, all the things we do in life. You're either in or you're not. It's very difficult to be half in on all of those things or any of those things, as we all know, because we try that. I'll be just a little in. It's hard to be a little in on things that matter in life. Because you know me, I'm always saying what's most important is showing up. You either show up or you don't. Yeah, Jill.
Maybe be a little vulnerable.
Also be a little vulnerable. Be willing to be vulnerable. Yeah, that's risking your life you're right. Being willing to be vulnerable and open in what you're doing. Be ready to exchange all you have for even the smallest gain. Any lesson there? That's part of the be all in, it seems like.
Take risks in order to look at your goals.
Yeah. I think it's pretty much similar. Be willing to endure physical hardship, same kind of things. Either you're all in or you're not. Go, well, that's too hard, I don't want to do it. It might hurt. And be devoted to your work and give no thought to doing anything else. That's the other thing. This is about back to intention and kavanah, which is focus, which is, are you willing to give yourself over to whatever you're doing 100%? And that's sort of the most important. Okay. One more, number 14. Yeah, number 14. Wait, you want another one?
6.
You like 6? I didn't have 6. Oh, you have the older version. Now you'll have to take that home. Everybody else doesn't have it. You did 6 last time. It's a great one, though. So we're going to do 14. Reb Yisachar Dov of Radishitz traveled to see his Rebbe. The hardest thing is reading the names. Reb Yaakov Yitzchak, the Chozeh of Lublin. Chozeh means the seer of Lublin, S-E-E-R. Arriving at his Rebbe's study, he said, show me one general way that all of us might serve God. Because after all, these are Hasidic Rebbes, that's what they're all about. How can we serve God? One way, the seer said, what makes you think there's one way? Are people all the same, that a single practice would suit them all? Then how am I to teach people to find God? Rabbi Yisachar Dov asked. It's impossible to tell people how they should serve. For one, I think I had this conversation with you about 5 minutes ago. For one, the way is the way of study. For another, the way is the way of prayer. For another, the way is the way of fasting or feasting. For another, the way is the way of service to one's neighbor. I just said all of this. Then, I must have read this. Then what shall I tell those who ask me for guidance in this area? Tell them this, the Chozeh said. Carefully observe the way of your own heart. See what stirs your passion for God and godliness. And then do that with all your heart and with all your strength. We read every service, every bar mitzvah, every bat mitzvah, stands up here and says, Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. We read the Ve'ahavta. Every service. It's in the Torah. Follows the Shema. We have the Shema and the Ve'ahavta in the service, in the Torah. And the Ve'ahavta begins, Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha. Love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your being. However you want to translate, b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, b'chol nafshecha, with your whole soul, your whole spirit, v'chol me'odecha, with all your strength. Or it could be with all your stuff. Me'odecha also means all of your possessions, everything that you own, to love God. The rabbis asked, well, what does that mean? How do you love God? Ve'ahavta. We have it several times in the Torah. You're commanded to love God. It's interesting because you're commanded to love God, and you're commanded to love your neighbor as yourself. Similar. Ve'ahavta l'orecha kamocha, Leviticus 19:18. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And the rabbis say, the way to show that you love God is by loving your neighbor. Because guess what? Your neighbor's made in the image of God. So if you want to show that you love God, love your neighbor. Not so easy. Easier to love God. I love God. Bless you, God. And everybody can say that. Loving your neighbor, now you got trouble. Most people don't love their neighbors. Most people are irritated by their neighbors. It's like that neighbor who keeps whatever and grows that tree and shouldn't cut the leaves. Things are dropping in my backyard and the dog's barking and all the good reasons not to love your neighbor. Much harder to love your neighbor than to love God. Loving God is like, airy-fairy, whatever, nothing, But in Jewish tradition, it's not so much about, I love you, God. That's why it says, B'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'od. Loving God in Jewish tradition is doing something, is how you act. It's not about feeling. Because love isn't about feeling. Love is about acting. Love is about behavior. We, in the modern American world, tend to think of love, as a feeling. But love isn't about feeling. It's nice that you have feelings. But back to where we've had this conversation many times tonight, nobody cares about your feelings. They care how you treat them. You can have all the beautiful feelings you want in the world, and then if you're screwing somebody over in business or any other way, that's all they know about you. They don't know about the love in your heart. They only know about the actions of your body and your mind and your hands and your feet and your mouth. That's what they know about. And love is the same. How does someone know that you love them? Yeah, but because even telling them you love them is an action. Saying I love you is doing something, but mostly people know you by what you do, not by what you say. How you act. Your kids, same thing. When you're doing parenting workshops and all that, it's nice to have rules for them. and say, do what I say, but what they do is they do what you do. So because it's your actions that matter in life. Your actions are the role model for each other, for your kids, and for your partners, and for anyone else, your friends, your family. It's what you do, whether you show up or whether you don't show up. If you love me but you're staying away, what kind of love is that? I'm not feeling well and you're like phoning it in. That doesn't feel like love. So that's here too. Here is, when we talk about loving God, we mean how you act in the world in such a way that enhances godliness in the world. That's how you show you love God. How you treat other human beings is your way of demonstrating, quote, love for God. Yeah. Rick.
To modern, current followers of Hasidic, do they read the same stories that we're reading? Do they get taught these same stories?
Well, they probably don't get taught the way I teach it because, who knows how I'm teaching it. But yes, these are traditional Hasidic stories rewritten in a little easier English by Rabbi Rami Shapiro, who retranslated them in their own way, and I like the book, so that's why I use these versions of them. But yeah, these are all traditional Hasidic stories. So they read them too.
Use these stories as well?
Yes.
For purposes do they use it?
I'm.
A study group for.
I don't know. To tell you the truth, I don't know exactly. I know these are traditional Hasidic stories, so as far as I assume, the answer is yes. Depends. If you're more likely if you're a Chabad Hasid to study the Rabbi and the writings of Menachem Schneerson or the down the line of the Rabbis, but which none of these are exactly. They're from other Rabbis. But yes, this is a traditional way of study, is sharing Hasidic stories among Hasidim too. Whether they come to the same conclusions that we would come in this room, that I can't tell you, but because we see the world through our own eyes. Whoops, time's up. So, in any event, I wanted this because this is really, for me, the most important lesson, which is following your own heart. That there isn't one right way of prayer. There isn't one right way of sacred service. There isn't one right way of healing the world. There isn't one right way of being Jewish or being any kind of spiritual religious person. There isn't one right religion in the world. There's human beings who are all, according to our Torah, created in the image of God. It doesn't say Jewish human beings created in the image of God. Abraham came a lot later than the opening chapter of Genesis. First there was 10 generations and then Noah, and then 10 generations more, and Abraham came, and we always call Abraham as the founder of sort of Jewish civilization. But clearly, whoever wrote the Torah meant to say that all human beings are made in the divine image. We may interpret it different ways. We may create our own unique rituals and customs and traditions based upon our own communities and how they grew in the world. But fundamentally, when we are supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves, there are two principles involved. Number one is you're supposed to love yourself. That's the whole world was created for my sake. Because if you love your neighbor as you love yourself and you hate yourself, I don't want to be your neighbor. So you need to love yourself, number one. You then need to see in your neighbor, in the other, a reflection of yourself and of the sacredness and divinity in yourself. And if we could just do that, I say just as if it's easy, we would have a different world than the world we live in. So I think that's one of the fundamental teachings of the Hasidic rabbis, is finding that spark of the divine within ourselves and finding it reflected in others, and spending your days searching for the sacredness in the everyday. And if we do that and go on that little blessing treasure hunt that I said, it will transform all of our lives. So time is up, and I thank you for being here and listening to me ramble on for an hour and a half. And I appreciate you all coming.